If the family or friends of Roy Church Gray Jr. were asked to sum up his life in one word, most would agree that would be dedication. Dedication to family, dedication to friends, and dedication to country. Colonel Roy C. Gray was born July 1923 to parents Margaret Shaw Gray and Roy Church Gray Sr. in Franklin County, Kentucky. From a very young age, Roy was fascinated with airplanes. As a youth, Roy would build and fly model airplanes. He was very dedicated to doing the very best he could. An example of this was when he competed in the National Model Airplane Society competition in 1941. His craft was entered into the rubber propeller division. He launched it, and as Gray remembers, it climbed to approximately 200 feet before catching a thermal and continued clear out of the sight. Roy won the division that year. The model plane was found and returned to Roy several weeks later. Roy began his studies in engineering at the University of Kentucky, but was interrupted after only 2 years with the start of World War II. Wanting to do his part, he enlisted in the Navy in 1941. Because of his background and proven aptitude, he was offered flight training, which he gladly accepted. After completing the 10-month course, he received his wings and a commission as a Marine pilot in 1942. With his deployment imminent, he married Natalie Martin Wheeler. She joined him in California, where they lived for 6 months before he left to serve in the Pacific Theater in both the Solomon Islands and the Philippines. He flew numerous combat missions over the course of the war and was presented with a number of medals for his contributions to the war effort. After the war, he continued his dedication to the Marines by deciding to make his life in service to his country his career. Even though the country was no longer at war, the Marines and Roy continued to train. In June 1950, while on a routine flight over Elsinore, California, his F-4U Corsair experienced a flash cockpit fire. While he could have immediately bailed out of the burning plane, Roy decided to continue to fly the aircraft to direct it away from a residential area below. Once clear of the populated area, and now at a very low altitude, he was able to free himself from the aircraft and parachute to safety. His staying with the plane was not without cost, as Roy suffered from third-degree burns on his arms and legs and was hospitalized for 6 months. For his heroic actions, he was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. With the onset of the Korean conflict, Gray once again found himself in battle. During the conflict, he flew more than 90 missions, but his last one would be the most memorable. While on a bombing mission, Gray's aircraft, an FJ-2, was hit by hostile fire. He was forced to crash land about 40 miles behind the front lines. He was taken prisoner and remained captive for 18 months. With the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement in July of 1953, Gray looked forward to being released. But the weeks dragged on, and each day he and several other of his fellow prisoners would be taken to the post where they expected to see freedom, and each night they would be brought back to the POW camp. In the end, on September 5, 1953, Gray had the distinction of being among the very last POWs to be freed by the North Koreans. Even after undergoing the misery of being a POW, Colonel Gray continued to dedicate his life to being a Marine aviator. And as before, when the call came, he once again answered, and this time to Viet Nam, where he served 2 tours of duty. In his first, he was stationed in Saigon as part of the Military Advisory Committee, and in his second, he served as the operations officer for the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, with responsibilities overseeing the operation of both helicopters as well as the aircraft being flown. In his post-war service, Colonel Gray became a test pilot at the Naval Air Station, Patuxent River, where he served as commanding officer of the Marine Aviation Detachment and also as a liaison to the commander, Naval Air Test Center. In 1973, Gray retired from active duty and began his next career as a civilian engineering contractor, a job he had and enjoyed for almost 20 years. He remained active in the aviation community, retaining his pilot's license until he was in his 80s, and he owned a Piper Cherokee that he would regularly fly home to Kentucky. Over the course of his military service, he distinguished himself and was awarded numerous medals and citations, among them the Purple Heart, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, the Legion of Merit, as well as many others. At the age of 92, Gray resides in the Patuxent, Maryland area, but winters in his hometown of Frankfort, Kentucky. It is therefore fitting that Colonel Roy C. Gray be enshrined in the official Aviation Hall of Fame of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.